Hey everyone, welcome back to another explainer. Today we're taking a really fascinating, honestly kind of dark dive into what the source texts call the cosmic theater. We're looking at a mythology where the end of the world isn't some random chaotic accident. No way. It is a highly calculated poetic script. We're going to explore how the complete collapse of divine order was orchestrated by a single, highly cynical intelligence, and how that destruction was quite literally woven into the very fabric of language itself. Now, if you thought mythological history was just, dusty textbook reading, listen to the raw percussive sound of these words. Runes are but rubbish, ruin is ripe. This isn't some gentle lullaby for a dying world, it's a harsh, biting mockery. These are the words of Lutgard the Arsonist, a primordial entity of fire and shadow. And as we hear right out of the gate, he doesn't just want to burn the gods' world down, he wants to insult them while he does it. Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly does a literary device bridge the gap between literature and literal cosmic destruction? How did a single poetic rhythm become the very mechanism that brought down the gods? To understand this, we really have to unpack the specific style of verse our sources highlight. This style is called stabraim. Basically, it's an authentic alliterative verse that heavily favors short, punchy lines. It links words not by rhyming the ends of lines like we're used to, but by slamming heavily stressed starting consonants together. In the context of this mythic universe, stabraim isn't just a stylistic poetic choice. It is the literal mocking rhythm of cosmic collapse. It's the drumbeat of the end of the world. And the maestro behind this drumbeat is Lutgard. But Lutgard isn't just some guy who lights a match. The sources define him specifically as a philosophical arsonist. This is absolutely crucial. As the living fire and shadow, Lutgard possesses a cynical, mercurial intelligence. He looks at the divine order and sees systemic hypocrisy. He sees a clumsy play built on, quote, stolen timber. He doesn't just burn structures. Actually, scratch that. He doesn't just destroy. He distorts perception. He casts these long, twisting shadows that turn a warrior's own strength into a weapon against himself. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the stabraim verse perfectly captures his entire attitude. In a parable known as the puppeteer's pride, he says, playing the puppets, predictable parts, cracking the cosmos, clumsy the kings. Notice those heavy, explosive P and C consonants. It literally mimics Lutgard laughing, spitting the words out as he watches the gods play out their totally predictable roles. It's the exact sound of someone mocking a broken system. Listen closely to the rhythm in the next few lines. Shadows are shifting, shaping the shame. Lutgard is laughing, loosing the lie. The relentless hissing rhythm of those S sounds, combined with the lulling L sounds, perfectly encapsulates his cold, cynical personality. He's just watching from the soot, completely unbothered, laughing as he unravels the illusion of divine supremacy. Let's put on our scholarly hats for a quick second and break this down, because the medium is the message, and the message here is destruction. We can analytically see how the specific verse style directly mirrors the inevitable breakdown of order. The hard C and K sounds highlight the clumsiness of the gods acting like bad actors. The hissing S and sh sounds represent Lutgard's calculated deception. And as we'll hear in a moment, other sounds represent the literal draining of the god's power. Language here is a weapon, actively dismantling reality itself. To truly grasp Lutgard's brilliance, we actually have to compare him to his primary target, the thunder god, Donar. Here we have Lutgard's calculated, reality-warping manipulation stacked right up against Donar's clumsy, blind rage. Lutgard uses brains and shadow energy. Donar just wants a violent purge. Donar thinks his rage is righteous, right? But Lutgard knows it's just a predetermined spark for the coming fire. This dynamic leads to a phase the sources call the Phantom Feast. Lutgard basically dances in the shadow of Donar's great hammer. He projects illusions of endless enemies, mirroring ancient giant magic. So you get this incredibly theatrical scene, mocking the master, mocker of might. Vain is the vapor, vanishing fast. Lutgard is tricking the mighty Donar into exhausting his immense strength, striking at absolutely nothing. And the result of all that wild swinging? Striking the shadow, shattering stone, wasting the weapon, weary the wrist. Listen to those W sounds. Wasting the weapon, weary the wrist. It sounds exactly like a deflating storm. It's the sound of heavy, exhausted breathing. Lutgard ensures that the gods are physically and mentally depleted before the true end even arrives. Let's move along and see how this all builds, because this dismantling of the divine order is a systematic, multi-layered process. It happens in 4 main steps. First, he feeds Donar's fury with whispers. Second, he forces them into the Phantom Feast to exhaust their power. Third, he binds them with the Cinder's contract. And finally, he sucks the oxygen right out of the world. It's an absolutely airtight strategy for the apocalypse. So, while Donner is out there swinging blindly at shadows, the chief god, Wotan, is desperately trying to hold the world together with laws and treaties. But Lutgard observes Wotan's failing authority with absolute mocking disdain. To Lutgard, these diplomatic bonds and runes are incredibly brittle. They aren't laws, they're just dry tinder for his primordial fire. In the Rubbish of Runes parable, he declares it plainly. Runes are but rubbish, ruin is ripe. This brings us to a really crucial point. The inevitable fall is legally and cosmically bound by the Cinder's contract. Lutgard uses his not-I shadow energy as ink to write a ledger of debts upon the world. As the Ink of Illusion parable goes, shadow is snaking, smothering the sun, ink for the ill will, inking the oath. This dark contract creates the bound blight, which is basically an anchor ensuring that any strike Wotan or Donar makes against the rot of the world instead impales their own grand hall, Valhalla, from below. They are legally bound to their own destruction. It's brilliant. When the final world-shattering tempest finally arrives, Lutgard makes his ultimate move. He transforms. In the breath of the burning, he becomes a massive, choking wall of smoke, literally feeding on the oxygen of Donner's final storm. Tinder for tempest, tearing the roof, oxygen of anger outlying all. He turns the gods' own defensive wrath into the exact fuel that burns them alive. And then comes the climax, what the texts call the kingly crash. Flicker and flattery feeding the fire. Valhalla is vanished, void is the vault. Notice how the verse shifts to those harsh, empty V sounds. Vanished, void, vault. It signals the absolute, unredeemable destruction of the gods' grand hall. There is no glorious rebirth here, guys. When the fire finally burns out, the universe does not end in a purifying, redemptive light. It is simply swallowed in soot. It is smothered in night. The weeping and wailing of the dying gods just fade away, sinking into complete silence. The relentless, driving rhythm of the Stabrain verse finally ceases. There are no more consonants to clash. There's no more fire to burn. The corrupt reign of the gods is totally over, and all that remains is total, absolute freezing dark. The sun is entirely snuffed out by the rising wall of soot produced by the gods' own shattered legacies. Which leaves us with a deeply unsettling question to end on. If an entire divine order is built on stolen timber and systemic hypocrisy, is Lutgard the Arsonist truly a villain? Or is he simply the inevitable consequence of a rotten foundation? It completely reframes how we look at this grim cosmic theater. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I'll let you chew on that question until next time.